November. Happy fall, Region Niners. Welcome to Region Talk, the podcast. I'm Jackie,
And I'm Isamar.
and we are here to give all our emergency managers and Region 9 a forum to get their news out, open up to discussions, and share success stories about IAM Region 9. So let's get started. Isamar, it's
But
busy.
first,
I don't know.
Region
We have a lot
9,
of we have a lot.
Region 9 updates. So today, actually, we just had our executive committee meeting. And essentially, that's where a bunch of our committee volunteers and our leader volunteers get together to discuss what's going on and having a really good discussion about initiatives in the region, how it's trailing upwards, how it's trailing sideways, that lateral and longitudinal communication. So that's just more of an incentive if you'd like to volunteer with Region 9 to come and join us at the executive committee meetings and find out what's going on in Region 9 and everywhere else.
Definitely. And I know some of our groups and our subcommittees are looking for volunteers, especially in the private public sector, our NGOs, and our veterans. So if you are interested, where can they contact us, Isamar?
At IAEM.R9publicaffairs@IAEM.com. That's actually really long.
It
We'll provide
is,
a, we'll provide a link.
or social media.
Or
Either
social
way.
media. That's easier.
And in a few weeks, we're going to have our IAM USA National Conference in Savannah, Georgia. What? Some of us are going to be there experiencing life, and some of us are going to live vicariously through other members. But either way, there's so many ways to still participate, whether you can be present or you can't. And one of the big ways is the basket bonanza. So if you are interested in donating something that represents your area, of Region 9, whether it's a challenge coin or a giveaway or something that's memorable that represents you and your emergency management agency in Region 9, please donate. There's submissions. We're putting a basket together for the conference. And Ismar, who's the contact person for that?
That'll be Jorge Rodriguez. So that's
Mr.
Mr.
Sonoma County. And Symposium, yes, you're right.
Speaking about symposium, so we definitely have a save the date from February 28th to March 2nd in Garden Grove. We will be having I guess it's not inaugural, but it's our second symposium, but our first in-person symposium.
Correct.
And if you want help, definitely contact Mr. Symposium himself, Jorge Rodriguez.
And we would give his email out on the podcast, but just email the public affairs email, or we're going to post it online in our newsletters. So you'll get that confirmation, that information through the email so you can confirm your involvement. We need volunteers, guys. It's going to be great. It's the first in person, first Region 9. And guess what? It's going to be the kickoff to the IAM National Conference that will be here in the state of California in Region 9. So two California events in 1 year.
Back to
That's going
back.
to be back to back.
Back to back.
Awesome. So this is going to be the precursor of today's podcast, which is about legislation and rules and policies that just really make us better emergency managers and produce. And one of the things that we're doing in IAM is our bylaws. So we have amendments to our bylaws, correct? And we're voting about these soon. And it closes next week,
November 7th.
right? So membership categories includes the vision and the mission of IAM USA, new membership, new bylaws, housekeeping, and actual. Really, it's important to read that because there is some wording and some verbiage that have been changed that really will affect the membership of Region 9. So if you can, well, not if you can, please do vote on this. We have until November 7th. So as you are dropping off your ballots for the midterm elections, vote on very important stuff that is happening at IAM because this does really embrace and affect and shape the character of our organization, both nationally and regionally. So if you want more information or if you didn't get the link or you lost it, our public affairs team or our director, this lovely woman over here, we'll send it to you.
Indeed, I will.
So I'm excited. But I'm going to let you do the intro. I'm just personally excited because I work with this gentleman on the organization and now in the same county. Woo! But I'm going to give you the pleasure to introduce this this amazing fellow of mine and colleague.
Amazing indeed. So, speaking about voting, all today is going to be political legislation about moving the needle forward. And today we have the California Emergency Services Association's Ray Riordan. He is the City of San Jose Director of Emergency Management. He is also the CESA past president and current chair for the Legislation Committee. So thank you so much, Ray, for joining us. Joining us? For
Thank
joining
you.
us.
I'm here. I made it.
There's Ray.
Took a
Welcome,
long time to get
Ray.
here. How are you?
So
Yeah.
thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
So you have a huge, many years of experience in emergency management. So if you could just give us a little bit about who you are, what you have done, and why legislation is so important, and why you took this role and have informed and educated many of us, like myself and Isamar.
Great. Thank you. Yes, I started my career 36 years ago. I began with the Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Services. I migrated then to, after 7 years, migrated to East Bay Municipal Utility District, where I was there as their emergency manager for 11 years. Took a break working independently for a little bit of time. And during that period of time, I was the acting executive director of the California Utilities Emergency Association and facilitated the response with EPA to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I joined in the city of San Ramon shortly after that for about 7 years. Took another break working with CH2M Hill as their emergency manager, and then came on to the city of San Jose the month after they had their historic 2017 flood. So I had to help the city repackage itself from not having a disaster for 20 years. There was a lag in a lot of the materials and programs that they had, but we're catching up, and we're able to catch up right before COVID hit. And then, of course, COVID took over our lives, our engagements, our activities. And so I've been able to help steer the city of San Jose to become the most vaccinated large city in the United States. Yes, we are the 10th largest city in the United States, but we were the number one city when it came to the vaccination program per capita. So we're very proud of that accomplishment. So along with that, obviously, as we experienced COVID, as we experienced so many things, there was a lot of policy and legislative action during that period of time, during COVID. And then we didn't have just COVID over the last several years, but we had fires, mega fires, we had power shutoffs, we had a lot of interruptions of services, and then that culminated in the need to respond on multiple levels. But during that period of time, in the last 5 years, believe it or not, in the state of California, there were 16 laws passed that affect specifically emergency management. And that's why it's so important for our committee, what the legislative committee does is pay attention to some of these bills, make sure our members are aware of what the impact of these bills are, and the intent of what they're trying to accomplish. Now, many of the laws, they're pretty practical and reasonable. For example, our plan should be culturally, address the cultural diversity in our communities. Doesn't that make sense? Okay, that's a law I think that we can live with. But what does it mean? I mean, how do we implement it? How do we engage that? So that's part of also what the committee does is to help understand the direction of where this bill was headed. And now that it's law, what's the implication? So there were a lot of good laws passed, and there's some laws that we're not quite clear. We're still having to work and understand. For example, there's a bill passed on establishing heat-related emergency plans according to a scale. And so there's some of that needs to be better understood as exactly what does that mean and what's that going to look like. So our committee has been very busy in addressing these bills that have been uh, passed, and how do we carry them out? What's our responsibilities in managing that? We've also had the opportunity. We had Assembly Member Rodriguez from Southern California who helped carry a bill that we hoped would make it through, but it was stalled on supporting funding for local emergency management. So our committee, paying attention to all the things that our community has experienced, we recognize in my 36 years, I can easily tell you that we've been underfunded as emergency managers. We've been told we have to do all these things, for example, these 16 bills, but there's no funding to carry that out. So how are we going to carry out the responsibilities of all that? And so we want to continue supporting bills like that one, or even find a legislator who will carry these bills, and to find out and build the best bill possible that will support us. Our organization, CESA, has put together a survey that we're looking forward to our members filling out. It'll take about 30 minutes. And the reason it'll take that much time is we're collecting a large amount of data that we can present to a legislator saying, look, here's all of the laws that we're required to fill out. And this is what's been required over the last 5 years. But how many jurisdictions are capable of being able to do that work? Where are the gaps in our capability? Where's our gaps in our resources? Do we have an emergency operations center? Yes or no? Is it hot? No. Yes or no? Do you have equipment needs in the EOC? Those are kinds of questions in the survey so that we can put together a survey or a results that we can explain to legislators that, look, here's where we need to go, but this is where we're at. And we need funding to get there. We need resources. We need some application to do things. So this data is going to be very valuable to us and to the members themselves, to you, the emergency managers in the state of California. And we will be happy. We're going to explain and let the IAEM folks know at the conference about what we're doing, how we're collecting the data, and offer the tool as an opportunity for other jurisdictions to also look at their level of commitment and resources or lack of resources within their state, so they too can use it to manage activity with their legislators. So we hope this will be a trend to other states as well, so we can get a good snapshot picture of what it looks like to be an emergency manager in the local area across the states. And I don't think there's been, at least we did some research, and in my years, I've been a member of IEM since 1992. In my years of being on the various committees in IEM, I don't think there's been a survey this complete before in any of the states that I'm aware of. I could definitely be wrong, but I haven't seen it. So we're happy to share information that we gather. We will first share the information with our members, particularly those who fill it out. Our goal is to get a survey from all 58 counties. We just need one survey from the county, from each of those counties, and then as many cities as possible to fill it out. So we get a good, strong picture of what it's like at the county level and what's it like at the local city levels, and whether or not we need the support, and I'm sure we do. So we'll be asking for a few things. We'll ask you for your organization charts. So get them together now before the survey gets to you. We're going to ask about a budget. What's your budget look like? How much money, how are you funded by the general fund or by grants, and by how much, so that we can demonstrate again, look, we're relying so much on grants, we're already expending these grants. This is where we need support from state funds or other resources. So that's why we're asking those questions. And when we gather the information, we'll ask for contact information, but that contact information will be separated from the data that we're collecting. So because we don't want to assimilate a person to a level of preparedness, because that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is show the resource commitment and the levels of responsibilities without assigning a city's name to it, just to give a sense of need. So that's how we'll keep the information confidential within the group. And so this is going to be all important information. We do hope that we'll have we'll ask for the surveys to be completed by November 28th. So please enjoy Turkey Day. We don't want to disrupt Turkey Day. So it's after Turkey Day that we ask for this to come in. But between now and then, gather the information, answer that 30-minute survey, And that'll go a long way to helping us because the next legislative session is coming, and that'll come in January. So we hope to have the data collected and summarized in December so that we're ready to talk to legislators in January. So that's their vision, that's our goal. And emergency management is a legislative process. And we do encourage people to come join our committee. We're a committee of 22 and we can always use more. So please, if you're interested in being part of our legislative committee, we're happy to engage you and have you as part of the team because we don't have all the answers. In 36 years, I still don't have all the answers. And I will look forward to talking with others about how they manage things that we're required to do. And that's a great part about emergency management and relationships. And this is going to help our relationship with legislators, other organizations by having data like we're looking to collect. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the committee. Questions, ladies?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for diving into that. And we'll have that little plug for also being a cross member of California Emergency Services Association, of which Jackie and I are also members, because it's always good to have your network as far as you can. But I did have one question in the way that you were reviewing the survey and the legislation that's coming through there. And I was wondering about the support at the state levels and with the news of Director Ghirarducci retiring. I was wondering why it was so important to have an emergency management professional appointed to the seat of the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Let's try to stay away from acronyms. To have the emergency services director be an emergency management professional. Why is that so important?
I think what's important is I've seen the evolution of different directors over the 36 years I've been involved. And it's gone from a variety of people with a variety of backgrounds. We did at one time have Henry Renteria, who was emergency manager for the city of Oakland when he was selected for the governor's position or the cabinet position for OES. We've had fire chiefs as the OES director. We've had educators who were selected to be the secretary of the office. So we've had a variety. And what's important and why it's important and why we did send a letter to the governor's office explaining that emergency management is a unique career and it brings together and it's a real relationship manager. It's someone that we all can relate to. And it's important to have our connection as emergency managers be strong with whoever is the secretary of Cal OES because it's so important to have that relationship and for them to understand what our gaps and needs are. We will also share the results of the survey with the new director, whoever that may be, because that would show them too what the concerns are for the local emergency managers and be able to represent that to the next secretary. But I think for the current secretary, Ghirarducci, did a tremendous job. His background is in fire, and he took the office a long way from where it was and really professionalized it and really brought the mantra of one team. And I think that's, again, what we're expressing with the governor is it's a one-team organization. The governor with the state, with the counties, with the local jurisdictions, we all must be on one team. And I think having someone who has the emergency management background would be a very strong indicator that that's what the governor's looking for too, is one team in this fight. I hope that answered your question.
And I think that's fascinating. You he definitely did, and I could see Isamar's face. She's lit up and excited for the answer. Um, but Ray, the question I have for you is it's so important for us to follow our state legislation like CESA has been doing and taking that information to other organizations like IAEM Region 9, California Women in Homeland Security, the International Public Safety Association. when we're information sharing and when we're paving the way, or as you yourself have been paving the way for legislation in California, how can our other states in our region, so Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii, take the examples that you're doing and use that information to pave the way in their own state, in their region? And two-parter, I can see the what we're doing will also affect future, possibly future federal legislation that would come through that would affect FEMA or emergency management. So why is it so important to do that, and how what one state is doing like CESA, Nevada could do or Arizona could do? Because not only sometimes do we have to fight locally as a team, but regionally as a team. So I would love to hear how what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's very interesting. Just yesterday at our city, we had quite the discussion on what's the role of an elected official and what's the role of us as city administrators and departmental directors, and um, where's the clash, where's the gap in terms of what the elected officials are trying to accomplish and what we as a city administrator are trying to accomplish. It's a very interesting dance that we do. And the data we're collecting is critical because if we want a legislator to tell our story, and that's what their job is, to tell a story of what the concerns are, what their concerns are, what the community's concerns are, and why they're taking certain actions. So if we can give the legislator a story of what emergency management is, what the challenges are, what we do have and what we are capable of doing, and what we're capable of doing with additional resources, that story is a strong story that a legislator can carry forward. That's why it's important for other states to do the same thing. Is what is your story? What can you tell your local legislators about what it is you do, what it is you need, and why do you need it? Um, you have a stronger ability to get legislation passed. And that's why, for example, the legislation on cultural diversity, it came up from, local groups, and they went to their legislators and saying, "Look, we're not involved. We need to be involved with this emergency management." Okay, that's a story I understand. That's a story I can commit to as a legislator. That's a story that I can use to write legislation. So that's again why it's important for us to be able to tell our story, and that's what the survey will help us do. And that's why it's important for us and what we're doing, and it has a ripple effect to the other states. And I do agree with you, Jackie. Not that we need to be able to tell not just our local legislators, but our federal legislators, so they understand. Look, FEMA's great. FEMA gives us this resource. FEMA gets us that. But this is where the gap is now, based on the federal rules, federal activities, and we also still have these gaps in the states. So maybe it's support to the state that's given. So I know during COVID, our legislators were strong in advocating for things like the American Rescue Act and other funding. And that's because we have sit down with our legislators, both on the federal side and the state side, on a pretty regular basis. When I say we, I'm referring to our city, the city of San Jose. And I think it's important for us as association members to do the same, to have our story, meet with our local legislators to let them know the story.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, because I think it's so important, the one word you said, storytelling. And this is the way we tell our story. And, when we talk about ICS and when we have an incident, we have, the tactical, the boots on the ground. You got the 15,000 foot and you got 30,000 foot, and then however much high you want to go. But the higher you are, the less you are to the ground. So if you want to make changes federally, we got to listen to the locals, right? And if
Mhm.
federals are going to come and make changes, they need to know what's going boots on the ground to make those decisions 50,000 feet and vice versa.
Yes.
It's really a disconnect when it's not being heard. Yet this is why we have people like yourself, Ray, that are being our voices, and we need to be louder because, you know, I think the work that you've done for the state of California has been amazing. But if it's more than one person or 20 people saying the story, it's going to become a legend. It's going to be told, and you're going to be able to change it and see it the way that you you vision it to be. So I really appreciate you for sharing that topic and bringing it back to. And I hate sometimes throwing this term, but the whole community approach, right? We always say that, right? That FEMA word, but it seems like it is that too in the same context.
And we as emergency managers are our own community as well.
Jen?
And we need to be able to advocate for each other. And that's what these
Mm,
platforms provide.
That's exactly what CESA at the legislative committee does, right?
yeah,
So before each guest comes on, we do a little Google search and we get some intel, but we were able to research a little bit more on CESA legislation since that's not a committee that we're that tied to, but but that's exactly what that committee does. You monitor the legislation at the state level,
Uh,
and we were just wondering now, what's the top legislation that we should be keeping our eyes on at the local level and at the federal level? Is there any wisdom that you can bring down
well,
our pipeline?
yeah, that'll change. Right now, everything, all bills that were going to be signed had to be signed by the end of September. So this legislative year is over. And now with the elections and some seats being voted on, both at the federal level and the state level, there's going to be a change. And there's all those new folks will be sworn in by the first week of January. And that's when in January there's a whole slew of activity until I think the second week, it's usually the second week of February, when the first bills are drafted and what's called heard in committee. So we had there in the state legislation, there's an emergency management committee, and that's newly formed in the last 2 years. Before we were part of another committee, more of a public safety committee, but now there's a separate emergency management committee in the assembly. And so if any bill is introduced, it's heard first in that committee. And then later on, you can make modifications to it. So the real push is in January. So there's no real legislation to push right now or to pay attention to until the slate comes out in January. And then it makes it through the committee, and then we can find out more about those bills as they're being developed January through February. And then they're heard at different levels. And then once it gets out of committee, then it has to go to um, the finance committees. And then if it passes that and passes the floor, then it goes on to the other house. So it goes on to the state senate. The same happens federally. So the House of Representatives vote on a bill, then it goes on to the Senate. But inside both Senate and the House of Representatives, there's a focus committee, and then a financial committee, a fiscal committee, and if it passes both of those, then it goes on to the other house. So we don't have a list yet, but there are a couple bills that have sort of trailed last year that are probably going to be heard again. But so we were tracking. I can't. I don't have a list in front of me right now of those that were looking like 2 year bills.
I just with what you were sharing right now, I just got the idea that we need to do like an emergency manager schoolhouse rock on how to
Yeah,
do legislation. I mean, hey, TNE to groups, both, let's all come together and do that. But it really is because it is a process. It's not just, hey, we need to do this, start pounding doors. There is a full process that you were saying, Ray, and I definitely think I would love to bring you back on and see how 2023 paves the way and how things have changed, especially now with the changes we're going to see in January with the
and then
midterms and stuff.
yeah, we certainly and if we get our ducks in a row and have our survey results, we can certainly come back and talk
Yeah.
about some of those survey results too.
Definitely would love it. And I know we're cut short on time. And I know thank you, Ray, for considering to come back and talking to us more about this because this is something that is, we need to get it out to our fellow colleagues and allies about everything that's emergency management and why we need bills, legislation, funding, just like our counterparts in other public safety sectors. So thank you so much. Thank you. Isamar,
Thank
I
you.
know you have last words because you. She's the cheerleader, man. I gotta
Yeah.
say it.
So thank you so much, Ray. We definitely will look forward to the next time. And so also thank you, Region 9, for joining us. And as always, we owe a big thank you to the man behind the screen, Brian at Sitch Radio, for being our awesome, most fantastic, fantabulous producer. And we just have to say a big shout out for Brian.
Thank you, Bri. And just a reminder, thank you all you Region Niners for being members, for being a part of our community, being a part of this podcast. And if you're not on our social media community yet, join us. I am Region 9 at IAM R9 on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. So get the most recent up to dates, what's happening. And if you're not on Substack, sign up, do it right now. Because as we always say, keep on rocking Region 9. We appreciate you. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your family and friends.